He won't tell you this, not with words, not even with hints, but there's a kind of touch he secretly craves, not just on his skin, but in his soul. And when a woman learns this silent language, she becomes unforgettable. Most women think men are simple, just physical, just visual. But the truth is far deeper. Men yearn for a kind of intimacy that most never receive. Not because they don't want it, but because they don't know how to ask for it. In this video, we're diving into the unspoken, the kind of touch men truly desire. You want to reach a man in a way that changes how he sees you, not just in the moment, but in the space he holds for you in his heart and mind long after you're gone? It doesn't begin with seduction. It doesn't start in the bedroom. It begins with something so simple, yet so rarely given: admiration. Not shallow praise, not flattery, but a deep feminine recognition of who he is and what he strives to be. See, most men go through their lives unnoticed in the ways that matter. They are seen for what they do, not who they are. They are judged by what they provide, not how they feel. And day after day, they carry the weight of being strong, being useful, being steady, without anyone ever stopping to truly see the effort behind it. But when a woman looks at a man, not just looks, but sees him with eyes that reflect genuine respect and appreciation, something powerful shifts inside of him. It's like she touches a place no one else ever bothered to reach. A man doesn't just crave physical contact, he craves the emotional touch of being understood. And admiration is the form of touch that penetrates past skin and into his psyche. It's the look you give him when he fixes something with his hands, even if it's small. It's the gentle way your voice softens when you say, "I love how you handled that," when he stands firm during a hard moment. It's the warmth in your gaze when he tells you about something he's passionate about. Instead of dismissing it, you lean in, interested, present, open. These little things seem so small, but to a man starving for emotional recognition, they are oxygen. When a woman shows admiration, it does something no physical intimacy ever could. It speaks to his mission. Every man is in some way on a quest, whether it's building a career, supporting his family, healing from his past, or simply trying to become better. He is fighting invisible battles. And when the woman in his life becomes a witness to that struggle, not as a critic, not as a competitor, but as a partner who believes in him, he no longer feels alone in that journey. Your touch on his arm when he's telling you about a challenge, your fingers brushing his neck while he speaks with focus, the gentle squeeze of his hand when he's doubting himself. These are touches that say, "I see the man you're becoming, and I'm with you." You might think he doesn't notice, that men don't care about emotional depth the way women do, but you'd be wrong. He may not say it, he may not show it, but every man remembers the woman who made him feel admired, not for his looks, not for his paycheck, but for the strength he tries to summon every single day. The world rarely rewards effort, it rewards results. But when a woman sees the effort in a man and acknowledges it, she creates a connection no one else can compete with. She becomes the place where he feels valued, not just validated. And that's rare. This is not about inflating his ego. It's not about praising him to control him or earn favor. It's about understanding that men, for all their stoicism, are human. And humans crave meaning. A man can have 1,000 experiences in his life, but the one that will define him most is being respected by the woman he loves. Because for a man, love isn't just about affection, it's about being honored. And when your touch communicates admiration, when it says, "I trust you, I respect the man you are, I believe in where you're going," you aren't just touching his body, you're touching his purpose, his very sense of self. Sometimes it's as simple as placing your hand on his chest when he's opening up, not to distract him, not to seduce him, but to let him know you're there, that you're holding space for him to be seen without judgment. Other times it's the touch of your voice, soft, feminine, supportive, when the world has been harsh and unrelenting. That kind of admiration doesn't just make a man feel good, it makes him want to be better. A woman who touches a man with respect becomes his compass, his fire, his reason. And let me tell you, this kind of touch is unforgettable. He may not be able to describe it, he may not even realize what's happening in the moment, but something in him will shift. He will begin to associate your presence with peace, with pride, with progress. And the connection you build through that emotional intimacy will run deeper than any physical chemistry ever could. Admiration isn't loud, it isn't dramatic, it's quiet, it's intentional. It's a hand on his back when he's working late. It's the way you smile when he walks into a room. It's telling him in small ways, I see how hard you try. You don't need to make speeches, you don't need to overdo it, but your consistent feminine touch, guided by respect, will reach into the places where no applause can. And when a man is touched like that, you become something sacred to him, not because you fulfilled a fantasy, but because you understood the one he didn't even know he had, to be seen, admired, and loved for who he really is, not the mask he wears in public, not the protector, the provider, the achiever, but the man underneath. And that right there is the kind of touch that changes everything. There is a kind of touch that doesn't stimulate, it soothes. A kind of presence that doesn't ask anything, it simply stays. Most men go through life braced for impact. You see them in their daily routines, showing up, solving problems, getting things done. But behind that calm face and steady posture is a man walking through storms you may never see. He's carrying stress, fear, responsibility, often silently, not because he wants to be distant, not because he's hiding from you, but because he's been taught that's what strength looks like. Don't complain, don't break, don't show emotion. And so he becomes a fortress. But what happens when that fortress is tired, when he's holding himself together with invisible tape and silent willpower? That's where you come in. That's where your touch becomes more than physical, it becomes medicinal. The reassuring touch of presence doesn't demand answers, it doesn't push for vulnerability, it simply exists beside him, calm, open, safe. When you walk up behind him and gently wrap your arms around his waist, when you place your hand on his chest and rest your head against him in silence, you speak a language louder than words. You tell him you don't have to carry it all alone. There is a quiet healing in presence. Not every wound needs to be spoken. Some just need to be held. When you touch a man with stillness, you enter a space that most people avoid, a space where he no longer has to be the one holding the world up. For a few minutes, in your arms, he can exhale. And that sigh, the one he lets out when he finally leans into your touch, isn't just about physical closeness. It's his soul unclenching. It's his nervous system recognizing safety. And that kind of safety, it's rare, precious, irreplaceable. Think about how the world treats men. They are celebrated for their achievements, yes, but rarely comforted in their exhaustion. Society tells them provide, protect, perform, but it doesn't often tell them pause, rest, feel. So when you, as his partner, become the one place where he doesn't have to do anything to be loved, That's when your touch becomes a sanctuary. You're not fixing him. You're not analyzing. You're simply offering your steady, feminine calm as an anchor in the middle of his internal storm. This isn't about grand gestures, it's about consistent presence. When he comes home worn out, and instead of immediately asking questions, you meet him with soft silence, a hand on his chest, a kiss on the temple, your fingers tracing his arm gently. It tells him, you're allowed to fall apart with me. He may never say it, but this is the moment he truly bonds with you, not because you made a move, but because you didn't run away from his stillness. And sometimes presence means patience. A man may not open up right away. He may not even know how to describe what he's feeling, but when you sit beside him, knee touching knee, hand over his heart, just breathing with him, you say, there's no rush. I'll be here when you're ready. That presence builds trust faster than any conversation ever could. It tells him, you don't have to perform to be worthy of love. Once a man believes that, something powerful happens. He begins to let go. Let go of the pressure, the fear, the act. And what remains is his real self. That's the version of him that few get to see. The raw, vulnerable, human man beneath all the layers. And you get to touch him there, not with seduction, but with stillness. The way your hand rests on his chest, synchronizing with his breath. The way your head finds the space between his shoulder and jaw. The way you sit in silence with him, not waiting for him to speak, but simply being there. That's the kind of presence men fantasize about, but never dare to ask for. Because in truth, most men don't need a rescuer. They don't want someone to solve their problems. What they crave, deep down, is a space where they don't have to be the hero. Just a space to be human. And the woman who gives that, who touches him with unwavering calm and lets him rest in her softness, becomes unforgettable. She's not just a lover. She becomes his refuge. This is why your presence, your touch, your stillness, it matters more than you know. It tells him you're allowed to need something too. And in that moment, the roles shift. He's no longer the protector. You are, not by force, but by grace. You hold him, not because he's weak, but because he's strong enough to trust you with his vulnerability. And when he learns that your arms are a place of rest, not resistance, when your touch communicates acceptance without interrogation, when your energy doesn't invade but invites, that's when your bond deepens. He stops hiding. He starts showing up, not just with his body, but with his heart. The reassuring touch of presence is not flashy, it doesn't shout, it whispers, it waits, it holds, it calms, and in a world that never tells men it's okay to slow down, your presence becomes a silent revolution, a return to something ancient, something sacred, something every man longs for but rarely finds, peace in the arms of a woman who sees him, accepts him, and stays. There's a certain kind of magic in a woman's touch that doesn't demand, doesn't seduce, doesn't even try to lead. It simply invites. And that invitation, when given with softness, with safety, with sincerity, becomes the very thing most men don't even know they're craving. The permission to be vulnerable. You see, men are trained from an early age to build walls. Thick, quiet, invisible walls that hide fear, pain, confusion, and even tenderness. The world rewards them for being strong, for being stoic, for holding it all together no matter what. But beneath that surface, beneath the muscles, the logic, the goals, there is a man who quietly aches to be known. Not just admired, not just appreciated, but understood. Without judgment, without pressure. And it's not your words that open that door, it's your touch. The kind of touch that says, you don't have to hold it all in right now. a soft caress on his cheek when he's lost in thought, fingers combing through his hair when he's lying beside you, not talking, the simple act of placing your palm over his hand when he's sharing something he's not used to putting into words. These little gestures, done without agenda, without the need to fix or react, create an emotional permission slip. They say you can let go, you're safe here. And for a man who's used to fighting battles alone, that kind of touch feels like coming up for air after years underwater. Because men rarely get to show their emotional depth without consequence. They're expected to be stable, reliable, unemotional, and when they do show anything raw or unguarded, they're often misunderstood or worse, made to feel weak. So what happens? They shut down, they pull back, they stop sharing, not because they don't feel, but because they don't feel safe. That's why your touch matters more than any well-meaning advice or heartfelt pep talk. When you offer him physical closeness with emotional softness, you bypass his defenses. You reach into the space behind his eyes, the one that holds every suppressed feeling he's learned to silence. There is no greater intimacy than the moment a man allows a woman to see his inner world, his doubts, his wounds, his fears of failure. And that moment doesn't happen because you pry it open. It happens because you make it safe to emerge. Vulnerability isn't extracted from a man, it's invited. And your touch is the invitation. You don't need to ask him to talk. You don't need to push him to feel. Sometimes all it takes is a gentle forehead kiss, a lingering hand on his back, a silent cuddle on the couch while he stares off into the distance. What you're doing in those moments is quietly proving, I won't run from your feelings. I'll sit with them. I'll hold them with you. And something incredible begins to happen when a man is consistently met with that kind of energy. He starts to relax, to trust, to let go of the need to be the rock all the time. He starts showing you parts of himself even he hasn't fully accepted. Childhood insecurities, quiet fears about his future, emotional scars from relationships past. And as you hold him, not just physically, but emotionally, he starts to believe something radical, that he's allowed to be fully human and still be fully loved, that he doesn't need to hide, filter, or armor himself in order to be desired. And that belief changes everything. Because when a man feels emotionally safe with a woman, when her touch becomes his sanctuary instead of a trigger, he begins to open, not just to her, but to life. He becomes more expressive, more attentive, more grounded. He listens differently. He speaks differently. His love deepens, not from obligation, but from freedom. Because nothing frees a man more than knowing he can be soft without being seen as less. And when your touch communicates again and again, I want all of you, even the parts you're afraid to show, he will start offering those hidden pieces of himself freely. But let's be clear, this kind of invitation is not weak, it's not passive, it's one of the most powerful things a woman can offer. Because you're not just touching his skin, you're touching his shadow, and in doing so, you help him become whole. You help him stop compartmentalizing his strength from his sensitivity. You make it clear that real masculinity includes depth, emotion, and vulnerability, not as something to be fixed, but as something to be honored. This is why your energy matters, your presence, your tone, your body language, because every time you respond to his rawness with grace instead of critique, with stillness instead of reaction, you reinforce you can show up messy. I won't leave. That stability is what builds trust, and that trust is what builds the kind of love that doesn't break when life gets hard. So the next time he goes quiet, the next time he looks overwhelmed but says, I'm fine, Don't force. Don't chase. Instead, draw close without words. Let your fingers gently find his hand. Let your head rest on his shoulder. Let your touch say what his heart is afraid to ask. Do you still want me if I'm not strong right now? Because the truth is, he's not looking for someone to fix him. He's looking for someone to witness him, to sit in the silence and say, I see you, I feel you, and I'm not going anywhere. That's the kind of touch he'll never forget. That's the kind of woman he'll never want to lose. There's a part of every man, no matter how serious, how responsible, how focused, who still longs to feel light, to feel unburdened, to laugh without guarding his tone, to smile without analyzing how he looks. He may wear the face of a provider, a protector, a planner, but beneath that face is a boy who once laughed just for the sake of it, who once played without purpose, who once felt joy without permission. And over the years, that part of him didn't die, it just went into hiding, buried beneath deadlines, disappointments, and the quiet pressure to always be in control. But here's what most women don't realize. Your touch can bring that boy back to life, not through seduction, not through intensity, but through something far more powerful, playfulness. Playfulness is not just flirting. It's not teasing with an agenda. It's a kind of feminine lightness that says, you don't have to be serious all the time with me. It's a subtle invitation back to joy. And when your touch carries that energy, when it tickles instead of tests, when it surprises instead of scrutinizes, you give him something rare, freedom. Not the kind of freedom that makes him want to leave, the kind of freedom that makes him want to stay. Because you become the only space in his world where he's allowed to relax, to laugh, to let his guard down, and still be loved. Picture this. He's been grinding through a long week. His face is tight with pressure. You walk up, slide your arms around him from behind, and instead of diving into a heavy conversation or offering advice, you whisper something silly in his ear and kiss his neck with a smile. Maybe you poke him playfully in the ribs or grab his hand and twirl him for no reason at all. In that moment, you're doing something sacred. You're breaking the spell of seriousness. You're reminding him you're allowed to have fun, even now. Men carry so much invisible tension, not because they're dramatic, but because they've internalized the idea that being relaxed equals being unproductive, being playful equals being weak. But your playful touch counters that programming. It tells him you don't have to earn joy, you can just have it with me. And when a man starts associating your presence with lightness, with laughter, with that spontaneous, boyish freedom he thought he lost, you don't just become someone he loves, you become the one who revives him. Playfulness in touch is often underestimated, but is one of the most bonding forms of intimacy. It builds a friendship within the romance. It says, I'm not just here for the deep talks and the serious moments. I want to enjoy you. That joy can come from little things, tapping him on the chest and pretending to challenge him when he brags, gently tugging on his shirt and daring him to chase you, play wrestling on the couch like you're two kids again. These aren't games. They're expressions of trust. Because a man only becomes truly playful with someone he feels safe around. And the woman who can unlock that playfulness has touched a place in him few ever reach. When you are playful, you allow him to forget the weight of being needed, expected, responsible. In those few moments where you laugh together, tease each other, roll across the bed, chase each other through the kitchen, you bring oxygen back into his world. He doesn't have to be the warrior, the planner, the builder. He can just be himself, and that authenticity is the root of real connection. Many women make the mistake of always leaning into seriousness in a relationship. They want to solve everything, analyze every word, structure every conversation. But men bond differently. They don't always connect through discussion. They connect through doing, through playing, through shared energy. So when your touch is filled with spontaneity and laughter, you're speaking his language in a way that words often can't. This isn't about being immature. It's not about avoiding depth. In fact, the playful woman often has the deepest impact because she reaches the parts of him that have gone emotionally numb. She doesn't try to open his heart with pressure. She uses warmth, mischief, curiosity, and over time, her playful touch becomes his favorite escape from the harshness of the world. Not because she makes life easier, but because she makes life lighter. There's something deeply attractive about a woman who can laugh at herself, who can dance in the kitchen without needing music, who can jump on his back unexpectedly and say, "Let's run away today." She becomes unforgettable, not because she's flawless, but because she's free. And that freedom, when expressed physically in the little ways, tickles, taps, stolen kisses, playful grabs, it tells him, "You're allowed to be free with me too." And you know what happens when a man feels that freedom? He becomes more open, more affectionate, more alive, because finally someone has given him back the gift he didn't know he lost. The ability to play, not just with his body, but with his spirit. And that's where love stops being routine and starts being fun again. The truth is, every man wants to feel young again, not in age, but in energy. He wants to feel like he can run, laugh, fall, be goofy, be silly, and not be judged. He wants to feel like he can mess up his words, wear his old hoodie, make a bad joke, and still be adored. Your playful touch tells him, "You don't have to impress me to be loved. You just have to show up as you are." So don't be afraid to be mischievous. Don't be afraid to giggle, to pull him into a moment, to be unpredictable in your affection. That's the part of your femininity that heals him. That calls him out of the battlefield of life and into the garden of joy. The woman who knows how to touch with laughter, with surprise, with childlike wonder, that woman becomes his safe place, his light, his escape. Not because she fixed his pain, but because she reminded him how to dance around it. And in that dance, he doesn't just fall in love with her, he falls back in love with himself. Every man, no matter how confident he may appear on the outside, wrestles with silent battles within. Self-doubt, fear of failure, the quiet nagging question of whether he's really enough. And most of the time he fights those battles alone. He doesn't ask for help. He doesn't show the weight, because the world has taught him to wear strength like armor, to keep pushing, to hide the cracks. But behind that mask of certainty is a heart that desperately needs something few are willing to give: a steady hand, a soft voice, and the kind of touch that silently says, "I believe in you." That's where you come in. Your touch, when rooted in belief, becomes more than comfort. It becomes fuel. When a man is feeling unsure, when his confidence wavers, when he's staring down the unknown and quietly questioning if he has what it takes, your belief becomes his compass. And you don't need grand speeches to give. You just need intention. You need presence. You need a way of touching him that says, without a single word, "I see something in you, even when you don't." Imagine this. He's sitting at the edge of the bed, elbows on his knees, lost in his thoughts. Maybe he's just taken a hit, a failure at work, a financial setback, a conflict with someone he respects. You walk up behind him, wrap your arms around his shoulders, press your cheek to the back of his neck and say nothing. Your fingers slide down his arms and lock into his hands. That single moment tells him everything. I'm with you. I don't doubt you. I trust your strength even in your silence. That's what belief feels like to a man. Because you see, men don't need saving. They don't want to be coddled or pitied. What they long for is a partner who stands beside them, not in front to protect, not behind to follow, but beside, shoulder to shoulder, with eyes that say, you've got this, and I've got you. That belief doesn't just make him feel better, it transforms him. It makes him braver, clearer, stronger, not because you handed him strength, but because you reminded him that it was already there. Sometimes the way you place your hand on his chest before he walks out the door, the way you hold his face gently after a long, disappointing day, the way you grab his hand at the dinner table when he's facing something difficult, it changes his entire emotional state. That touch becomes a mirror reflecting back his worth. It whispers, I admire the man you are, and I see the man you're still becoming. And when a man feels that kind of belief coming from a woman he loves, it lights something inside him that the outside world could never reach. It's easy to believe in someone when they're winning, when they're confident, when everything's going well. But the real magic, the rare kind of love, comes when you believe in him during the drought, when things are uncertain, when he's doubting himself, when he's fumbling through failure and wondering if he's lost his edge. That's when your belief becomes a powerful kind of medicine, and your touch, it becomes the method by which that medicine is delivered straight into his soul. Maybe it's the way you rub his shoulders while he's working late at night. Maybe it's the way you lay your head on his lap and say, you're doing better than you think. Maybe it's the way you squeeze his hand before a meeting or a challenge and tell him with your eyes, go, you were built for this. These things are not just romantic gestures. They are reminders, and men, especially good men, need reminders because so often they carry so much pressure, and no one ever pauses to say, you're already doing so much right. That's why your touch matters more than you think. Because when it comes from a place of belief, not anxiety, not control, not fear, but belief, it becomes transformative. It lifts him out of self-doubt and into alignment with his purpose. And it builds something priceless between you. Trust. Deep, unshakable trust. He begins to trust that you're not with him for what he provides or how strong he appears, but for who he is at the core. And when a man knows that the woman in his life sees him clearly and still believes in him, he becomes unstoppable. He becomes more than just a man in love. He becomes a man on fire. And it's important to know this. Belief doesn't mean ignoring his flaws. It doesn't mean sugarcoating reality. It means seeing his effort even when the results aren't there yet. It means loving his process, not just his product. It means holding space for his growth without needing him to be perfect. And when your touch communicates that, when you run your fingers through his hair after he's failed, and you say nothing but stay right beside him, you're giving him something no one else can, the strength to try again. So never underestimate the power of small gestures. A hand on his knee when he's quiet, a kiss on his forehead when he's unsure, a hand squeeze when you see his anxiety creeping in. These moments may seem small, but they are sacred, because men remember the women who stayed when they were low. They remember the hands that held them when they were uncertain. They remember the softness that didn't ask questions, didn't fix, didn't panic, just believed. That kind of touch stays with a man forever, not because it excited him, but because it lifted him. Because it said, I see your fight, I know your heart, and I'm not afraid of your shadows. Because it whispered, you don't have to prove yourself to me. I already see your worth. and because it made him believe in himself again, exactly when he needed it most.